All right, good evening. We'll call the Mandan Park District Board meeting to order. Today is September 9th, 2024 at 5:30. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
Okay, no. Okay. At this point, we'll move to the public communication part of our meeting from any visitors in the crowd. Anyone like to come forward and talk about Mandan Parks and Rec? Yep, come on up. State your name, please, and recognize you from a couple meetings ago, Rick.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Rick Tentis, and I have a few questions for the Mandan Park Board concerning budgetary and other items. I'm wondering offhand.
So just to be sure, we have a public hearing for our budget, our 2025 budget. Are your comments on that or
No,
other areas?
not really.
Okay, all right, because that'll be the next portion of our meeting. So just wanted to make sure.
Basically, I'm wondering what the max mills are allowed by the state for the park district. Do you know what they are?
We haven't raised our mill in quite some time, so I'm not.
But the max for our general fund is 38. Special assessments unlimited. Special assessments unlimited, and then our capital improvement is 5.
How many times in the last 10 years have we assessed less than the max?
Every year.
Yeah.
Every year you've assessed less than the max?
Mm-hmm. Every year.
Oh, that's great to hear. Great to hear. I had one other question concerning the park district operation. I'm wondering how many times will the park district entertain outside forces, like, for instance, the tennis association, the gymnastics association, the hockey association, the softball association. How many times will the park district entertain improvements to Mandan facilities that are generated by those people, not at a cost to us, but eventually the cost comes to maintenance and employee staffing? And I'm just kind of wondering, how often are we going to continue to do that? It's enlarging the footprint of the district. There's no doubt about it. It has to. Somebody has to take care of these facilities, like the tennis facility that was built up here. Who's going to take care of that? It's certainly not staffed by all the tennis club members. The hockey club, they don't staff all those positions. I'm just wondering, how many times are we going to do this? Are we going to continue to do it every time a citizen group comes forward and says, oh, we need this in Mandan, so let's get it built, and then dump it onto you guys for maintenance and employee staffing?
Sure. Well, I guess I would say we would entertain those public entities coming forward 100% of the time. Now, will we actually partner with them and go that route? I can't say that we would, but you know, being an elected official, we need to listen to our public just like we're listening to you. And if somebody comes with an idea that we think we can build and fund and maintain through either user fees or through leases or whatever, we're going to entertain that all the time. Now, whether we actually do it all the time is a whole nother question, and that's why we're all sitting up here.
Well, it's pretty much all the time.
You probably hear of the ones that we do, but there's been some that we have not. So.
Yeah, well, my question leads toward, well, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
When is enough enough? When is the park district and its facilities enough for the citizens without the constant expansion? That's my question.
So Rick, a few meetings ago, we actually had a study done to make sure that we are able to maintain and take care of the facilities we have. The good thing is we weren't too far off. We were able to budget and handle more people to take care of the facilities that we have. Some of our entities do make money, some of them do not. If we only had entities that make money here, we would not have very many services for the people that go here. The other good news is when we do take money from those that donate or naming rights and so on, we put it in what's called a vision fund. And we have a vision fund where we have money set aside to help offset the costs of the maintenance to some of our turf fields and some our Starring Sports Complex. So we don't have to raise mills down the road. So we don't have to go back to the taxpayers and say, okay, we built this 20 years ago. Now we need to raise mills by 5 because we need to put new turf on there. So we have plans in place that maybe won't cover 100% of the cost, but along with those user groups, we think we can fund and we can maintain the facilities that we have.
Well, I think a perfect example would be that new bike path on the south side. I mean, I don't really know the whole story behind it and who pushed it, but the usage of that path is quite minimal and the cost was quite excessive. And I just kind of wondering, who was it built for? For what reason? I ride bike. I know where the bike paths go.
Which bike path are you?
The one that leads
19th
from
Street?
the Mandan Municipal Golf Course to the south side of Mandan.
The 19th Street and the one along the
Right,
highway there. Yeah.
right.
That was a joint effort between 3 entities and some federal dollars that did
Yeah,
that.
but who'd you build it for?
I would disagree with you. I drive that every single day. I see kids on there, bikes on there, people walking on there all the time, and I hear a lot of comments for that path.
Wow, you should go out there and videotape it then, because I'd personally like to see it.
Sure. Okay.
Because I've driven it many times myself, and I have yet to see one person walking it.
Okay.
And in fact, the path itself is, from an engineering standpoint, it certainly has some rather interesting facets.
Sure. And we've had some of those things fixed, so.
Yeah, and I just want to add with the
Director
trail there,
Hagelin
though,
has some comments on
it will get milled and overlaid because of the construction that it was put in. There's a lot of defects associated with it, so that mill and overlay is hopefully going to start next week to get it to where we are comfortable with it. But the trail itself definitely has been a benefit to our community. It ties our entire city together. I actually saw 2 kids pushing their push cart to go play golf there the other day, so I thought that was interesting before school started. But the mill overlay will get done to the defects that were put in the construction.
That's great, great. I just had one more thing, if you got one more second here.
Sure.
I'm just a question. When will the park board intend on basic, reasonable event guidelines to regulate excessive tournament play at Prairie West?
Just Prairie West?
The events that are held at Municipal are really not an issue,
Okay.
except for on days, and it occurred 3 times this year, where there was an event at both Prairie and an event at Mandan Municipal. That didn't work out too well.
Sure.
But it may have worked out well for the people that were in the event, but it didn't work out too well for the other 25,000 people that live in Mandan.
Rick, what would make you say that it didn't work out for the other 25,000 people in Mandan as far as?
Well, what exactly do you think the opportunity for those other 25,000 people to play any type of golf during that period, it was non-existent. And it occurs on I would venture to say, I don't have the list right in front of me, but I would say that it applies about 30% of the time during the entire golf season, which I think is substantial.
Rick, how many tournaments would you like to see at those?
No, I'm not saying I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys what to do. I'm just asking you if you will consider some reasonable guidelines. Do you want to hear some guidelines?
Let's hear them so we can.
Okay, the number 1 guideline would be to have no tournament start before a 1 p.m. shotgun. Number 1.
Can I ask why that is, Rick?
Because that would allow at least a portion of the day for the morning portion of the day for patrons to finish their round without being told that they are not allowed. Of course, that would impact the evening rounds, though, because those people, if they start at 1, they're not going to get done till until 5 or 6 o'clock. So the people that would like to play on weekends or after 4:30, 5 o'clock, they'd be impacted by that. Yeah, another, number two would be absolutely no tournament play on weekends. None. Not for me, but for the people that work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. They count on on playing on weekends. They can't play on weekends sometimes, simply because the tournament is scheduled on Saturday. As far as I know, I don't think there was any scheduled on Sunday, but I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I wish that they would, you would consider some sort of guidelines from this committee or
And I
group.
think Commissioner Scott sits on our golf committee, and I know has worked with Garrett and Brent a little bit. We do have guidelines that is in policy, and I think we adhere to those guidelines. What is, I think we have in our policy, it says 3.
President Meschke, no more than 3 tournaments a week. And I don't disagree. I play every weekend too, and I think there's only been 2 Saturdays that I haven't been able to play all summer. So I'm pretty much there every morning too. I agree that this past week, with the United Tribes events taking place, I think we need to do a better job of accommodating that so it's not Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I think your point about 1 o'clock on a weekend is valid. I don't disagree.
I would also agree with that, and I don't agree with the 30% of the time we've had tournaments out there. That would be very excessive.
Get the schedule out, look at it.
I do look at it every single week, being the portfolio holder. But what we will do for you, Rick, and we can visit at another time, but at the end of every season, we do sit down and go through how things went for the year kind of meeting, and we can discuss that and see if there's another means for some of those tournaments to continue, but not maybe take up the entire day for 3 days straight.
Well, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. Rick, I just want to comment on that too. Thank you for not coming up here and tell us to get rid of all our tournaments, because I could never support that. We bring a lot of people into our community that maybe don't go on the other side of the river to participate in those tournaments, and they are spending money in our community. They're bringing tax dollars to our community. They're keeping other programs in our district alive too. Like we talked a little bit earlier, is golf is one of our money makers, and we're able to offset the cost of some of the other things that we have going on in our park district because of that. If we didn't have the money makers in our district, we wouldn't have the facilities. And I know you think we probably have too many, and we continue to expand, but I think we've done it pretty responsible fiscally in the years that I've been on here. So thank you for at least not asking that, and maybe we can find some compromise to look at that. Obviously, we want to cater to our Mandan citizens, but also we have people from out of town that come here too and really enjoy our courses that help support our economy and our whether it be Mandan Municipal or the Prairie West Golf Course. So, but I know Commissioner Scott and I have talked a little bit about this, but back to maybe committee. If we're right now, I don't think that we are probably breaking a policy that was set many years ago. And maybe it's time to look at that policy and maybe take a look at it. What I can't probably guarantee is that you're going to get your tee time every day at what time you want, so we have to show some flexibility maybe on that end. I don't ever get the tee time I want, but I don't plan that far in advance sometimes. So
Booked it already.
Rick, right, probably, that's probably it. So, but anyway, appreciate you coming again, Rick, and thank you for the input. Any other public communication from visitors at this time? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll close that portion of our meeting for public communication. We'll move on to minutes. Could we look to get approval of our August 12th, 2024 regular meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Mutter.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Melhoff. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. All right, moving on to item 1, public hearing of the 2025 budget. So we had our preliminary budget, and now we are looking to approve our budget. Anybody want to come out from the crowd to talk about our 2025 budget and what we proposed? One more time, anybody want to speak of our public hearing on our 2025 budget? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I will close that portion of our meeting. We'll move on to item number 2. We're looking for approval of the final budget reading of Ordinance 1056, making the annual appropriations for the expenditures of the Park District of the City of Mandan, North Dakota, for the fiscal year commencing January 1, 2025, ending December 31st, 2025, and making the annual tax levy for the year 2024. Yep, we need a motion to approve the budget unless we have some discussion on the matter.
I'll approve the final budget reading of our ordinance 1056, making the annual appropriations for the expenditures of the Park District in the City of Mandan, North Dakota, for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2025, ending December 31st, 2025, and making the annual tax levy for the year 2024.
Motion by Commissioner Mutter.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Scott. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay. Motion carries, budget approved. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, presentation from Lower Hart Water Resource District flood mitigation proposed plan for Mandan Municipal Golf Course. I think we have, do you have something first, Cole, or?
Give an introduction.
You're going to
and an
introduce,
overview.
all right, you're going to introduce, okay.
President Meske and Commissioners, with us today, we have Dennis Reap with HDR, represents the engineering for Lower Hart Water Resource District. We have Bill Robinson, who is the chair of the Lower Hart Water Resource District. As you know, they do flood protection for the city of Mandan. We've had discussions with them over the years about this proposed item here tonight. Last time we had some discussion was about 3 years ago, impacting the levy in regards to Legion Park was going to be impacted at that time. As you know, Mr. Reap came to our meeting in May, updated us because we were doing our phase 2. We got our core permit for our intake for phase 2, that water transmission line to irrigate the ball diamonds and the softball fields and potentially Ferris Field site. And at that time, we were proposed with some potential levy improvements that might impact Mandan Municipal Golf Course. So in your packet is a lot of information I gave you. I tried to simplify it in a way that made sense for everybody to kind of understand. It's been a quick turnaround. I appreciate Lower Hart inviting me to the last 3 months of meetings to kind of get an update. We had a good meeting I think it was 2 weeks ago maybe, at their last board meeting. Asked a lot of questions. I think there's going to be further questions here tonight from you. So with that, I will let Dennis Reap with HDR kind of present his PowerPoint, and then we'll ask questions after that.
President, Commissioners, I'm Bill Robinson with Lower Hart, and I would just like to give you a brief before Dennis Reap talks about more of the specifics here. Got to get past the technical difficulties here. So if you've had a brief introduction, I know it's been a few years, so I'll give you a little bit of background. Mandan's working on a flood protection project. It is a FEMA-driven project, meaning FEMA ran a test, I believe, about 12 years ago, and not only in Mandan, but a number of communities in the state, so we're not alone in this. But in that study, it indicated we're missing about 3 foot of freeboard, short 3 foot of freeboard in an ice jam event. Not so much in a free flow state, but in ice jam. So we're working on a project to get it up to ice jam levels. The levee is vital to the economic and social health of Mandan. There's about 2,600 developed residents and businesses that are affected by, should we be remapped by FEMA, would fall into the 100-year floodplain. Also, there's a lot of city critical infrastructure for the city on the dry side. A little bit on the background on the Hart River. It does originate in Billings County. Total land mass is about 3,300 square miles. The levee is supported by 2 dams along the river system, Dickinson Dam and Hart Butte Dam. and when the ice gets to the city of Mandan, it is susceptible to ice jams. The levee was constructed by the Corps of Engineers back in the late 40s and completed, I believe, just prior to the spring of 1950. The north unit was completed in 1949. The north unit is the core unit that does protect the city of Mandan. The lower unit and sunny units were completed basically by height in 1959, 10 years later. The lower unit is the trolley bridge area south to the confluence. And the sunny unit is everything west of what we would call Brady's and going out west to the bridge, west of Mandan. The levee has protected Mandan from numerous major flood events, primarily 5 of them, and probably at least another 7, 8 more that were near those upper events. Like I said, the study was completed in 2012. There are also some geotechnical and internal drainage deficiencies that are on the dry side of the levee. And we did a brief study on what the economic impact would be if this area does fall in the 100-year floodplain. Estimated flood insurance impact is about $10 million annually. This would include premiums and that type of thing. The north unit and lower
That's
unit.
current? That's what you're saying is currently the estimate? around
That
10?
is what, if we went into the 100-year floodplain and federal law requires mortgage holders to,
Right.
the impact would be about $10 million of annual premium. So with this, we've been designing this thing for probably the last 9 years. This is the 3rd version of flood protection. Each version we've looked at, the cost has come down. Physical impact has come down. But this one we've been focused on for probably 6, 7 years. The flood elevation does require a levee raise to meet freeboard in the municipal golf course area, primarily for discussion hole number 4. We are looking at 3 options to meet this requirement. One would be to install a landside or dry side seepage and stability berm. And I'll have Dennis talk about that in a little bit here. Second option is a seepage cutoff wall. That is a wall that would get buried under the interior of the levee. And the other would be pressure relief wells that would go along the dry side of the levee. All have certain impacts, all have pros, all have cons, and costs attached to them. On this map, we're showing all the areas that do require improvements or are set up for improvements. On the left-hand side is the reach we're talking about, the 6-inch or greater in the municipal area. We are replacing that flood wall that is near the number 2 tee box with the earthen levee. Along 3rd Street near the trolley area, we're going to build up what we call now a spur dike, which runs along the bank of the levee. That would protect 3rd Street from actually serving as the dike. And then farther downstream, there's levee increases also. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, my name's Dennis Strebe. I work with HDR Engineering. We serve as the engineer for Lower Hart Water Resource District on this project. And Cole mentioned that we talked to you about 3 years ago, or it's been talked about in the past. This is a relatively newer development on this cycle. We didn't anticipate having to raise the levee adjacent to the municipal golf course until we went through a FEMA review about a year ago. They identified some processes they want us to look at, and as a result of those, we ended up with a freeboard deficient reach along hole 4. It's a very minor deficiency. It's actually on the order of 6 to 9 inches. but it just kicks in some criteria that requires us to redesign to newer standards, and that kicks in some of these options that we have to look at. So just a little more background there. I'll go through three options in order of the most preferred, next preferred, and least preferred. So
Is that in order of cost too?
It happens to be that way, yes it does.
I figured so. And we did get this last month. We didn't talk about it at the meeting, but we have seen, we've seen these options. So
Okay, and so...
I mean, you should go through it. I think the public needs to see that and hear that too, but.
Very good. So yeah, the first one is landside seepage stability berm. It would encompass almost the entirety of hole 4 fairway. It would have some restrictions on it. If it is the chosen option and constructed, it does not allow for large trees to be planted on that seepage berm. I think there's some options for shrubbery, but it would have to be shallow rooted type vegetation. So, and what we're showing here on this screen, it's tough to read, I know, but we're basically looking at a 5-foot fill at the toe of the levee that tapers down to about 2 feet on the east edge of the fairway, and then it tapers off at a 5-to-1 to daylight. But that is the seepage berm. That's what's required for the levee. In order to accommodate a golf hole on there, we've also added another 4 feet of fill on top of that seepage berm that's not needed for the levee, but would be conducive to operating a golf hole on that. Now that's a total of quite a vertical difference, especially on a flat course like that. So it would be, unique, I guess. And it would require a permanent easement. As North Dakota law allows, it's a 99-year easement, but essentially permanent as far as we understand it. That's the permanent part. There'd be some construction easement. The other part of it is, and I'll go to a map here too, and we can start talking about pros and cons. On the left side, you can see, it's tough to see, I apologize for that, but there's a kind of an orangish hash. That would be the permanent easement footprint as we understand it right now. The purple hatched area would be temporary construction easements. And so when we say temporary construction as it relates to a golf course operation, you're probably looking at multiple years of impact. Undoubtedly, you're looking at direct impact of probably a season. And then there's just the ramifications of reestablishing the golf hole after that I don't understand as well as the other people in the room here. But the pros of it are it's lower cost. It's the lowest cost of the three options. It's a passive system that does not require flood fighting operations, so it sits there and operates without intervention. It can be constructed, the seepage berm part can be constructed by a normal heavy construction operator. And it has relatively minimal impacts to existing utilities. The cons are it requires that easement agreement with Mandan Parks, and it does have some definite impacts to the golf course. Depending on where we get the borrow, we could have some impacts to the community of just hauling borrow in from a long distance, and we're working through some of those options with Cole and his consultant, and maybe you'll hear a little bit more about those today. So those are the pros and cons of the seepage stability berm. I don't know if there's any questions, or I'll just continue going unless you intervene.
I do already have a question, and I think we're all going to have lots of questions here. But did you say it was only going to affect us 1 year? Because I thought I read somewhere it was 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear on that. The direct impact, the direct construction would be a season. But understanding that after you're done constructing, you still have remnant impacts to the golf course as far as it being able to operate. I mean, you're going to have to reestablish vegetation, and I think I've heard Garrett and Cole maybe suggested it's a minimum of 2 years total, or possibly 3 years total of impact to that golf hole.
Thank you.
Option 2, okay, seepage cutoff wall, and like Bill kind of described, it's a cutoff wall that goes directly in the levee system. It still would have construction impacts to the golf course, but it wouldn't have necessarily the longer term impacts as far as becoming operational again. And so this is a proven method. It is more expensive on the capital, the upfront costs. Just some pros and cons of that. It again allows for a relatively low cost with long-term maintenance. Low cost for the maintenance. It is a passive system. It does not have necessarily permanent impacts to the golf course. It does not require a modified easement to complete. The cons are the high cost of the installation. You would have to accommodate the existing municipal golf course intake. There's an existing sanitary force main that would impact. It does require a specialty construction contractor. It does require a large staging area, so there'd be some temporary impacts on the construction side that are a little bit unique. One of the things I do want to point out is that there's a potential that it could restrict groundwater flow underneath the system because it would be 60 feet deep basically under the levee. And so if you have this impermeable barrier, you could restrict groundwater flow from the east to the west to the Heart River and have some, unknown or perceived impacts upstream into that housing in other parts of the city of Mandan. So some concern there. It would have a schedule impact to the Lower Heart project. It probably would set us back a good 6 months to a year just because we'd have to retool and redesign some stuff. So. Any questions on that?
Yeah. How much of the Legion Park are you taking with that one? And then second part of that is, did I hear that you guys were going to do some work near hole number 2, right? Did I hear that right?
We don't intend to.
I think Bill had mentioned that. Yeah.
Okay.
It wouldn't be part of this project. It's separate, correct?
Okay.
Okay.
So would that wouldn't be part of this project, but when would that be? When was that? When are we talking about doing that?
It would be part of the project.
It would be part of the project.
It should not have any impact to the park system, in my understanding.
And then on this one with the hole 4, how much of this would affect hole 4?
On this option? Yeah, so if you can squint at that map, the purple is a temporary construction easement boundary. There's really no permanent easement boundary. That dark black hatched area is what we had anticipate as a staging area for the construction of that slurry wall. So right now it's kind of set up, and I forget all the infrastructure you have right at, but I think it would impact your practice green. Sorry, I don't know it that well. As far as Legion Park, that one would have relatively minimal impact.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right.
Pressure relief wells, this is the least desirable. It's got some, it's not terribly, it does require a specialty contractor, but it would be relief wells basically every 100 feet along the west fairway, west rough, right next to the toe of the levee. And so there'd be 22 of them, and they would be sticking up above ground. So they'd be subject to vandalism. They require ongoing operation and maintenance activities that can be pricey and require some specialty contractors to do that. So again, this is a footprint. You can see all those little red dots represent what a relief well would be. Again, there's no permanent easement requirements, but it would just have some higher cost and then higher O&M costs throughout the life of that part of the structure. So, any questions on that?
With I'm going to ask all 3 of them. Is it going to affect, because our irrigation system is coming through the Heart River, so which of those 3 would not affect it, or would all 3 affect it?
Well, I think the seepage berm would have one of the least impacts to it. it still would, I think that, and I don't understand the operation of the current intake system all that well. I think Garrett or Cole said there would still be some impacts even with the seepage berm, if I understood that part correctly.
The current setup is that there's a floating intake adjacent to hole 4 there. It's piped through the current levee system and into that pond. I would imagine what a concern would be that much construction equipment, messing with the integrity of that pipe. The actual irrigation system itself, the pipe that runs along hole 4, we would have to make some modifications in order to be able to irrigate the rest of the golf course while that area was being affected. The extent of that to be determined based on the area affected.
And that feeds the retention pond, correct?
So just the intake from the river currently that feeds, and then the rest would be the actual operation of the golf course irrigation system that's fed from the pond.
Garrett, what would that, do you have just a rough guess what that would cost us?
I don't.
Okay.
Until I have more information.
Thank you, Garrett.
Okay. So I'll just go into the conceptual costs. And again, I know you've seen this. Again, we can just briefly go through it and then you can ask questions. So of the three, we're estimating, this is, again, conceptual costs. And we're estimating about $3.5 million for that seepage berm, stability berm construction by itself. That does include an estimate of golf course mitigation. And that was, again, they're conceptual, so I don't want anybody to hang their hat on these, but hopefully we're doing apples to apples comparison through each of these alternatives. The cutoff wall, you can see it's about $3.9 million just in the construction, greater than the seepage berm. We're looking at some relocations of that water intake that would have to happen with this option as the sanitary sewer. And then we'd have some additional design that would have to go into this that would set us back schedule-wise, but also cost money up front. And then the pressure relief wells, again, they're actually the second most expensive to construct, but when you add in the long-term maintenance over the 50-year expected life of those relief wells, it just adds up to a lot of money. And plus they're just kind of an eyesore and probably subject to vandalism and other issues with that high of a traffic right next to them. So I did put together a project funding breakdown, and this is total project as it exists right now. Right now we're looking at about $25 million for the entirety of the project, all with stuff that Bill described, and we are recipients of a federal FMA grant, Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant through FEMA. That was applied for in 2023. It was received here, and we're just starting to see actual official approvals of it, but it will be coming. But the issue with that is it's capped. It's capped at $13.8 million. Still a nice chunk of money. The state of North Dakota, Department of Water Resources, has been a good partner throughout this all the time, and so they cost share at 60%. That leaves the remaining cost share at 40% of the non-federal share. And when I said 60% for the state, it's non-federal monies. They pay 60% of it, including design. So the locals, it falls on 40% of that non-federal share. In 2022, we did go to the city commission and get a citywide assessment approved. It was tiered, and so the people that are protected, the area you see in that blue shaded area, are paying roughly 65% of that local cost share. And then the remaining 35% are paid by the remainder of the city. And so that's $3 million and $1.6 million under this cost scenario. Just as a point of information, that equates to, for an inundated area, residential parcel, about $1,000 would be contributed by that parcel towards the cost of this project. Typically those are bonded and they are spread out over 15 to 20 years. I did not include those numbers, but they're, I guess relatively small. They're not $1,000 each year. I just want to make that clear. Commercial, we added another factor of 1.25 on top of that in the breakdown. And so commercial parcels will be paid more. And then for the non-inundated areas, it's $250 total. Again, that would be spread out over multiple years, or it could be paid off early. And so that's the numbers essentially for the entirety of the project as it exists now. So in just a summary, I mean, in HDR, again, advises Lower Hart. Our recommendation was to pursue the seepage berm from a cost perspective, from a long-term maintenance perspective, and at least, I guess, mostly the cost and ease of construction is the reasons behind that. So that's essentially the presentation. Certainly be happy to take any questions related to it.
I'm going to say something because these guys are going to say a lot more things about detail stuff, but I'm going to be honest. I'm really worried about what our citizens are going to pay for. Every year, Rick made a great point, is that place brings in 4 meals for our community. And if I have to close that golf course down for 1 year, I got to find 4 meals. So one of the things that I'm concerned about is easement. I read about you guys would like us just to donate the land. I'm concerned about how our citizens are going to pay for this, because it's going to cost not just the city part, but also the Mandan Park and Rec. And like I said, that golf course makes us 4 mills, and I do not want to add 4 mills to Rick or my taxes for the next few years. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on that, I see the federal dollars were capped, so if the bids come in high, that's going to fall on the locals. So would the city have right of refusal to back out at the time and not match local, or where do we go then?
Well, I'm not an expert on the citywide assessment type process. It was approved, and it's basically at a percentage level of project cost. So I don't know the ability to back out of it. I guess I don't have a great answer for you there.
Sure.
Commissioner Melhoff, if I could add. So I asked that question before the meeting, and discussion was what happens if, like normal assessments, if it's over 40% of engineer's estimate, it can be rejected and then protested out. Well, this has already been, letters been sent out. This information has been communicated. The improvement district is closed. So essentially, depending on how good or bad the bids potentially could come, this project would still be able to move forward, that it wouldn't be able to be protested out. Now, the concern would be is what is that dollar amount that the city and Lower Hart are going to, comfortable with putting back onto the taxpayers in regards to this. We're kind of like the third party of this because we just happen to have land adjacent to us. We're kind of the lesser of two evils, meaning we want to make it economical but also be safe for our community. And so the Park District, with Commissioner Mutter's comments in regard to the 4 mil value, yes, we bring in over $400,000 a year at Mandan Municipal. It's equivalent to right around 3 to 4 mils. The only caveat would be is, yeah, our revenue will be down during construction, but our expenses will also be less. We still are going to have to pay staff. We're still going to have to maintain whatever's available there, whatever expenses associated with the golf course. If it's going to remain open or not, that is to be determined.
Dennis, what does the permitting process involve as far as a timeline?
So right now, and this is part of the equation too, this discussion, we need to, kind of finalize our design. We need to resubmit to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for a Section 408 permit, which is required because they constructed the original levee. We also need to submit to FEMA for a conditional letter of map revision, which would, because you're essentially changing your floodplain maps. Those take a while, and so those typically take 6 months to a year to process once they're submitted. And I don't know if you're leading into a construction timeline question.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they take time, and so those are the main two. I mean, there's a construction permit from the state of North Dakota that takes some time too, and other smaller variety type permits, but those are the main ones.
So we would most likely be looking at later year 25 before you'd even have approval for the permit?
I would say that would be a reasonable judgment. And Cole's been asking some pretty pointed questions too about, how would this affect how could we time this, if this is the chosen option to have the least impact. And so it's a big project. This is one part of it. I think we can, set up the construction contract to direct certain timelines. They could work on this particular stretch of the project. I heard the end of, I don't know if I heard you correctly, August 1st or late of August is when you could start construction and be out for a year.
Yeah, so Commissioner Scott, just to kind of how we were thinking from staff and our discussions internally here is we got to work it backwards. Like we have to seed probably by July 15th, August 1st, so we at least have 3 to 4 months of obviously quality weather before it goes dormant, and then we come back into the spring. So whatever year that they get approvals for their permits and construction was to proceed, we have to stipulate when they could start so that we can work on the back end. So let's just say if it is approved and it moves forward, let's just say it can't start till August or August 15th or September 1 of 25. They have until August 1st to get their construction done, and then we could seed August through the rest of the fall to have something ready to go. But we also know in 26, it's a complete shutdown, no matter what option we go. Because the concerns that we've had would be if you just do hole number 4 or you do the cut wall, no one's going to come play 8 holes. You're going to lose a lot of tournaments. Revenue's going to be down regardless. We have safety issues of how you get people from 3 green all the way to 5 tee box with people coming down 9 if they have. So there's a lot of variables that we've talked about. And then do we do some renovation opportunities on top of that since we're going to be under construction?
So we're looking at a 1-year construction window, but really it's probably more like an 18-month to 24-month effects of the course.
I mean, Garrett can work magic, but I think he can grow grass, but I don't know if he can get it any sooner.
Depending on the construction timeline of reconstructing the golf hole, from the minute that it's constructed till playable, 20 weeks is pretty standard for growing time and maturity of that turf grass.
The other question, and Cole keeps bringing up to me, is that can you guys, is there an idea or a thought process of using the dirt at the golf course and let us redo the whole golf course? Is that a possibility or not a possibility?
Yeah, no, I think it's, the material required of the seepage berm is not terribly stringent. And so the soils on site, we certainly believe could be used. And I think that is I think it's a great idea if it works out. I think it's somewhat of a win-win situation given the situation. It's 90,000 cubic yards. And so the question I have, and that we haven't confirmed yet, is can all of that come from the golf course site and still work into a nice redesign of holes 3 through 9? That certainly would be a win situation, again, given the conditions. And then that would eliminate some of the trucking through the community to take from a separate borrow area. So it would be a reduced construction cost just from that aspect. And so it's certainly, again,
Construction of the berm, maybe
the
not
berm.
the golf course.
right. I mean, and I did check with the state, one of the questions I had is, okay, we're talking a golf course mitigation. Is that, cost shareable by state rules? And I was assured that it is. And so, making the golf course, restoring it, making it whole, is what I would view a project cost. And so it's not here, Parks and Rec, you pay for this part of it. It's a project cost. I think what you're out, and obviously it's been stressed, is you're out revenue during that period.
So you're proposing 1.5 million for that mitigation for?
That was real conceptual. I'm sorry, I don't. I wouldn't write that any place other than
Well, it's there.
it's there, right?
So we see.
Just forget you saw that.
We don't
No.
see mitigation costs on the other two options. So, I mean, obviously, we got to weigh those things. Yeah. So there's some residents to the north of our property there. What do they have to do? I mean, if we go with the seepage berm, or am I just seeing this tiny map wrong? What kind of easement do they need to give, or are you proposing something else on that north side there?
Yeah,
Or doesn't it get to their building?
We're really not getting outside of the park property with that option. And so my hope, this is kind of initial stages, is that I hope that this is the extreme extent of the impact.
So that part is acceptable as far as the height and everything?
Right. It's just that short little reach that's freeboard deficient.
If there were houses on hole 4 right against this, what steps would you guys take to? I mean, I'm just trying to. I mean, there's not, and we want to be good partners with this, and we want to. I mean, we want Mandan to be safe, and we want this to, reduce damage down the road, if so be it. But what would you do if there was houses along there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the approach is the same, right? You're looking at impacts. What that probably brings in is more of a little more direct or critical social impact that you might have to deal with. Buying somebody out to put in that feature is maybe a little different than impacting a golf course. I mean, that's
the reason I ask that is when I get to easements, and I'm going to ask Attorney Ruff to maybe talk about, obviously we have a responsibility for the city of Mandan. I don't think any of us got on here, thinking we're going to rebuild and do a seepage berm, but we're looking after golf course, and we're looking after what we provide for our community. But Attorney Ruff, how does that work with other government agencies working together, and should we expect an easement and for a fair price to totally redo our golf course, or just hole 4?
Well, with respect to the easement itself, I don't know for sure whether Lower Hart would have the ability to go through condemnation. That's a question I haven't looked at. If there were houses there, to go through condemnation, buy those properties at fair market value. So I'm not sure of that answer to that question. As far as easement is concerned, from what I know to date, and I think that's been confirmed, that there isn't an easement along the dike currently for any construction or any permanent changes to the dike. Is that correct?
Well, so when the Corps constructed it, theoretically they got land rights or easements. I think the issue is that the Corps had were notorious for never recording those, and so I believe there's an easement. Is it recorded? No.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, if there isn't a recorded easement, there isn't an easement. Okay, that's my position. Then the question is being good stewards, and we want to be part of this project. It appears it's something that is necessary to be completed and probably a little overdue in completing. But that doesn't mean that we just have to say, here's an easement. We're going to give this to you. No private landowner would be required to do that. They would be compensated for that easement. And I think that we should be in that same position, that there should be some arrangement, some compensation that should be worked out to grant the easement for the lost revenues we're going to incur, the changes to the golf course, things of that nature. Now, what that amount should be and how that affects the project and who ultimately is going to pay for that, those are all questions that have to be looked at as part of the negotiations for the easement.
And that's kind of where I was getting at with the easement side. We can say this is what the easement's going to cost, and we negotiate that, but somebody still has to pay for that. And it's not going to be Lower Hart, I don't think. And I don't think and I don't know that I want it to just, you guys have, I don't know, depending on how much it is, but it seems like whatever we do, it's going to be passed along through a special assessment to taxpayers, so.
And I'm not on the Lower Hart board, so but right away costs are typically project costs, and so there's other, as you might imagine, there's other easements that are in the process of being obtained, and they're going through a negotiation process. And so it is a cost that Lower Hart has been paying. Again, I'm not on the board, but so.
Commissioner Mechke, I do have another question with respect to the three options. Now, the cost estimates have been presented, and the one that's being considered is the lowest cost estimate. I assume an analysis has been done as to the efficiency of all three options in terms of flood protection. Are they all sort of equal, or is one of the options better than the other two? Understand my question?
Yeah, no, as far as an economic standpoint, or in protection standpoint, they're all equivalent. Yeah, I mean they all have their little warts, but essentially they're all effective and serve the same purpose. And you alluded to eminent domain or condemnation. Lower Hart is a water resource district. They do have that authority. It was, and if you probably paid attention a couple sessions ago in the legislature, they severely restricted it and reduced that ability. And so it's definitely a last option, and not something I don't think they ever would care to pursue. So.
We don't want that either, but I think in good faith, we need to ask these questions because, not only we're losing part of our golf course and the community's losing part of their golf course and the revenue that's associated with that.
President Mitchke or Cole, or I don't care who it is there a way that we can see what it's going to cost our taxpayers on, for me, I would feel more comfortable. It's got to be done. I understand that. But I want to make sure that I understand what it cost our taxpayers before we vote on something, because I don't want to land on a landmine and we should have went the other way type of thing. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
And I think that's all part of the negotiation too, and who pays for. Are there more federal dollars out there? I mean, we can. Not today. Okay.
And we all know when you bring in federal dollars, you bring them into your backyard.
I understand.
Too, right?
I understand that too.
And to your point, I think you're asking about factor in operational losses. No, the answer is not yet. And I think you've kind of started a process to try to identify what some of those capital costs in making the golf course whole again would be. I do have that last slide in your handout that shows the difference between the two preferred options or two main options on just the project costs, how that would affect those assessments. But beyond that, I don't have that.
And President, just to add one more comment to that. So President Meskey and Commissioners, we did have our virtual meeting with a golf course designer who's got experience with flood protections and mitigation work. You have the proposals in front of you for hole number 4, and you have another proposal for potentially renovating 3 through 9. And so the big question would be, from a park district standpoint, we're going to be shut down regardless, and we're going to have less play. So do we use this as an opportunity to potentially redesign holes 3 through 9? The dollar amounts may change slightly, plus or minus $500,000 one way or another. But from a taxpayer standpoint, if we can minimize 7,000 trucks from driving on 3rd Street, take the fill from the existing site, redistribute it in a way that the person who comes to the golf course goes, wow, they did flood protection and they made an improvement to an asset. Yeah, it's on a golf course. Yes, the park district's benefiting, but some of these improvements that we're going to have to do, whether it's an irrigation system, expanding the pond, maybe a new intake, all that cost was going to come at some point. Can we package it all into one item and not necessarily call it a purchase for an easement? We can package it however we want, but here's the result from the consultant. Here's what he's telling us it's going to cost to redesign by redistributing the 90,000 cubic yards. We may not have a huge savings from their estimate, but at least we have put the dollars back into it in a way that benefits everybody long term. Lower Hart wins, the park district wins, the citizens wins by the most economical way, and the assessment is somewhat controlled. If we go to the cut wall, we know estimate-wise it's already a $5 million increase. We're not going to be anywhere close to that. I think if we renovate, we're hearing numbers in that $4 million range. Well, if we have $3.5 million today that we're estimating for just hole 4, and we don't have to redistribute the 90,000 yards, and we can stay right around that 4 million, we're still money ahead.
Just to piggyback on Cole, we've reached out, I think Garrett and Cole did, maybe Brent was part of that too, but just to get some design, and again, how to redesign hole number 4 or do the whole course. Preliminary numbers, we don't really want to go too depth with that. But has the city been part of these talks? They're going to be a player in this too, I would assume, as far as the assessing and things like that.
Not yet on this particular topic. They've been engaged, or we've given updates periodically throughout the project, but not on this particular topic. No.
I guess this is actually one of the been on the board for a few years. This is probably going to be one of the most difficult decisions that I think I'll have to vote on. I need more information. I need a lot of questions here. I'd like to sit down and talk with these guys, or have a committee. If we could have a committee that would get together, obviously, Commissioner Scott with the golf portfolio, and I know you're itching to get going, and you're this is what, 7 years in the making? Is that, I think 7, 8 years you've been?
I was in high school.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Dennis. It's going to be a difficult decision because we're going to have to balance a lot of things. So I guess I personally would like to get the city involved probably a little bit more on our planning and what, because we want them to support this project and us, going forward too, and what we're going to do in Mandan. So that's just my 2 cents. I think, and I have a lot of other questions here, but I think those would be better handled either through a committee member or in a subcommittee to maybe get those things answered.
As an FYI, Mayor Freilich was at the last Lower Hart Water Board meeting and listened to some of the same discussion. Okay. And so, of course, I don't speak for him, but he was supportive, I guess, in general of the path we were tentatively laying out.
And I think we are too, if we can iron out a lot of big details, probably. So maybe not, but yeah. We know that, again, we want to be good stewards to our community, and if it needs to get done, we want flood protection. And
Right. Without it, people would not be able to get flood insurance if nothing is done. Is that correct, Dennis?
Right. Well, they would be put into a floodplain, and so they would be subject to flood insurance, and so they could get flood insurance.
Could get it, but they might be in a position where they are forced to have it rather than having the option.
Yeah, if they have a federally backed mortgage, they would be forced to have it. Yep. And so
which is another cost to look at if they're paying specials, or are they paying for flood insurance?
Yeah, $1,000 over 15 or 20 years compared to what they might cost them for flood insurance is money well spent, but you still have a lot of questions on the table. Like Commissioner Mutter, I don't want to have it cost the taxpayers any more than anybody else, because we are taxpayers too. So we don't make decisions just to charge everybody else. We're making them for ourselves as well. But what is the bare minimum that we need to do tonight, Cole?
So, Commissioner Scott, one of the things in that proposal that we received from Norby Golf Design is that it's a 14-week turnaround. And so I understand we don't have any direction or what option, but we know something's going to happen at Mandan Municipal Golf Course. We just don't know all the details as far as the assessments and the costs. I'd hate to push off 2-3 weeks of a decision when we would lose that with a design from a rendering standpoint. So that's where he'll put together some costs. He'll put together a master plan as far as what those renderings could look like. Now we have something to see, like what it's going to look like when on a finished product, and some cost estimates associated with that. Now, if the board wants those cost estimates before they approve that, that's something that can happen. But I don't want to lose 2 to 4 weeks on renderings and cost estimates at this time. So I'd like to have, the first step would be at least get, and the board can decide if you want hole number 4 only, or if you would like the whole course renderings. I would recommend the whole course renderings for the $19,500 that the park district would pay. We can get that started and not lose weeks, and then hopefully have something back in 14 weeks of what potentially that would look like.
So it's 14 weeks from the date we sign these papers.
Correct.
If we go that.
Yep.
Garrett, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is that,
I agree with Cole's assessment on that. That lines up with my thought process.
I know there were some other, I wouldn't say crazy ideas, but there were some other ideas on how that course could look, knowing that we have land in other places around there that we could make it look a little different. My personal opinion, I think the draw to Mandan Municipal Course is that it's a flat course and it can be easily walked, and we get people, I think with the study that we did the one year, 60% of our golfers that came out there came from outside the 58554 zip code, and I think they come there because of the ease of play, bringing beginners, bringing kids there to learn. So for me, that conceptual design is important, that it somewhat maintains that. You know, not a lot of water hazards, and we're not hitting, you know, in between a lot of trees, things like that. I think that's what draws people to that. And I could be wrong, but we do bring a lot of people out of town into there, so.
Can I have one real quick question? So hole 4 would be in that whole golf course thing, so we really wouldn't need the other one, correct?
It would be included, hole number 4 would be included in the total golf course renovation, but if you don't want to spend the 19.5, then we'd have to go back to the 12,000 one. That would only be hole number 4.
But hole 4 might not be there if hole 4 might be somewhere else, or it could be 2 par 3s there. I mean, it just depending on what they come up with in the direction
Absolutely.
they give. So that
Absolutely.
could be hole 6 and 7. I mean, depending on how they look at it. That's how I look.
Chairman Meschke, I've reviewed the proposed contracts with Norby Golf Course Designs, and Cole indicated they kind of were rushed out, and there's a few things that would have to be negotiated and changed. In particular, if there were any disputes in court proceedings there in Hennepin County, Minnesota, we will not agree to that. And secondly, the agreement is to be governed by Minnesota law. We will not agree to that. So unless we can get him to change that to Morton County, North Dakota, and under North Dakota law, that this contract will not be entered into by the Park District.
And say we don't agree to that, do we have a backup option in the state of North Dakota? You, Garrett?
To my knowledge, there's no other actively participating golf course architects or any architects that specialize in that type of
Specialized
work
in
in
that,
North Dakota
yeah.
currently.
Okay. So if we choose to move forward with that, you're saying, Arlen, we should have those stipulations put into not just to sign these, but to put those in there. Sure.
And then President Meschke and Commissioners, just in that proposal about owner's responsibilities, I don't know what's been done with HDR in this area, but obviously we are, as the owner, are required to provide the survey, the topographic survey, soil data, testing, wetlands, all the things that potentially would be an additional cost over and above the design. So we don't have that information in front of us. We'd have to hire either.
That's what Norby's asking for, yeah.
Correct. So that's an additional cost that we don't know what that would be to get this information, to construct it and design it.
Yeah, and if I might, just add to that point, and I saw that too. As part of our environmental analysis, we're already doing environmental, and we basically decided we would like to do the entire golf course for that part of it. And so, the wetland delineation, I think, would be relatively easy to get to within our current activities. The survey, I have a question on. I don't know if they need, topo survey and what the frequency is. That would be a little bit of a effort to expand on what we've already done, or if LiDAR works for them. I don't know. Probably not, I'm guessing.
I would assume that LiDAR would work. That's becoming more and more prevalent in golf course construction.
So LiDAR is available, and I think it's a quality level such as fine as you can get in today's tech. So maybe that already solves some of those issues. I forget what the other ones were.
The big ones.
So what's our next step with Dennis and Bill?
I guess if you want to give direction to them that you are supportive of the seepage berm option, that allows them, I know that was one of the key components in our meetings, that they could at least know that we are supportive of the seepage berm to eliminate the other two options, allows them to start their permit application, doesn't tie the park district to giving them access and nailing down what's going to actually happen. But I know you guys are under a timeline.
We are. I mean, but we've been that way for a long time. But yeah, no, any type of, I didn't hear, absolutely not. I mean, I think I did hear that. Obviously we're not going to walk out of here with a actual vote saying we absolutely support the steepage berm, but and we have other parts of the project that we can continue to work on, but it will be a schedule hit. The more we wait, we'll just have to be a little bit later in our submittal to the Corps and to FEMA.
I think for me, I need to see the cost estimates, for the, is it, how do we balance that out? And if to totally resign that, are we close to that second option, as far as cost? I don't think we will be. I think we'll be well under that, but where it's, minimal impact to our
I might just add one more thing that was discussed earlier, about the cost of an easement. Right-of-way costs from a state perspective are not eligible for cost share. So when they get an easement from somebody, they do not get covered by the state of North Dakota. Mitigation project costs, moving dirt does.
So it depends on what we call it.
It depends on what it is. Yeah. So if there's a check written to Mandan Parks for right of way, my understanding is that that's not eligible. If there's a check written to Mandan Parks to construct a seepage berm and using borrow material from the golf course, I think that's a different story. Just something to consider as you go forward.
President Mischke, can I make a motion for a subcommittee of you guys? I don't care who's on it, but a subcommittee to look at this and make sure what we do is right.
Yeah, I think I can just appoint one, can't I? Or do you want a motion?
You can, but Commissioner Scott has the golf portfolio,
I would,
so
yeah,
the question would be, would you like to appoint additional person to that? And I think if you wanted to, I think Commissioner Melhoff, with his engineering background and contracts, would be a good recommendation to help us through that process.
And any meetings would then have notice because two of you are there, but would you two agree to be on that subcommittee?
Absolutely.
Of course. So we'll do that. And then I think as much as we can get, I know, Commissioner Freilich is in support, and I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts here that I think we have questions to, and, so I don't know if other people from the city should be involved as well, but I guess maybe Cole, if you want to reach out to them and see if they want some of their engineers maybe on it. I don't know how much background they have with this, but it would be helpful.
Just had preliminary discussions with City Administrator Neubauer, and I think we all have the same questions, and I think that's where we just got to get all entities together that are going to be impacted in making this decision what's best for the community.
Okay, so we'll do that, and then I guess we would need a motion if we want Cole to approach Norby Golf Course Design Incorporated to enter in an agreement with them to give us some cost estimates and renderings of what each option would look like, so we can get the ball rolling on that.
I would make the motion for Cole to make contact with Norby, and then bring back a contract that would make this changes to Morton County and North Dakota law, not Hennepin County and Minnesota state law.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Motion by Commissioner Scott.
Second.
Did you? All right. Second by Commissioner Melhoff. Any further discussion?
So just to clarify, so we've already contacted Norby Design, so are we getting direction to enter in which one? I'm assuming it's the renovation of the entire
full
court.
renovation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understood that way. I just want to make sure it's clarified verbally.
Yep.
So yours just for the full renovation option, or both options?
Just for the full renovation, because hole 4 would be in there, or any changes to hole number 4 would be included in that. So I think that's the best use of our money.
How many renderings do they give us for that? Will
I
they
think
give
we'll
us a-
have probably 3 or 4 drafts and then probably finalize one, and then that will be the final one that we submit. And then any revisions after that have an additional cost, but I think we'll be able to have a lot of input, and staff in the park district, as far as the golf course staff, will be involved.
Okay. Attorney Ruff, anything else you saw in there? If we get that taken care of, you felt we're good with the contract? Okay.
I think Mr.
I think with that, I'd be fine with the contract. Cole mentioned the other items, or the deliverables that we'd have to get. It sounds like those would all be available or readily available. So I would be fine with those things.
Mr. Chairman,
Dennis, yeah.
I happen to notice one thing. I see it said Mandan Parks is located in Fargo too. Just another little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, really?
And again, to his defense, we met with him at 6 a.m. his time in California. He was on a project, and we needed something by Friday, so he was definitely met our timeline, and we knew there was some typos in there that will get addressed.
Oh.
We wanted a dollar amount more than that.
But they're not going to pay for any of it. Fargo's not going to pay for any of this?
Hey, it's worth asking, right?
Probably try that. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Cole, does that clarifies the motion? Okay, and that cost will be $19,500. Is that correct? Okay, so you want to amend your motion to include that cost, because we'll have to pay.
Sure. Amend the motion to include $19,500.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll vote on this one. Okay, Commissioner Mutter,
Aye.
Commissioner Melhoff,
Yep.
Commissioner Scott.
Aye.
Yes from me as well. Sorry, guys, we don't maybe have the answer that you want yet, but I think we'll get to that. So,
Thank you very much for your
Yeah,
time and
yeah, thank you
discussion.
for coming.
Certainly reach out with any questions as you work through this process.
okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4, construction project updates, Ferris Field, Youth Baseball Complex, boat ramp, and golf operations building. Cole, is that all you?
Yep, President Michigan Commissioners, I'll be really brief. Appreciate your guys' time here tonight, but Ferris Field project is complete. Just some minor things on some irrigation that has to be completed, but seating's down, water's running. We had our walkthrough Friday afternoon. It looks good. Hopefully we'll be playing in it, a year from now when the weather cooperates. But yeah, we're pretty excited to have that going. As you know, the project was approved. We spent right around, estimate construction cost was $863,000. We're at around $880,000 is what total funding. So we're going to be right around that $15,000 under budget. There is some improvements that we'd like to use that $15,000 for, and that is the sidewalks that lead there. The sidewalks run north-south along Ferris Field are the original sidewalks that led into the football field, and there's a lot of movement and heaving, and so we've spent a nice chunk of dollars renovating those diamonds. We want the public to have sidewalks that, one, are safe, that aren't heaved and cracked from over the time, and then construction did damage some. So we'd like to take that 15 that's remaining and utilize that, and we would just work from the south end and work all the way far north as that would cover. And then there are some portions on the north end of that sidewalk where the future potential synthetic turf will go. The sidewalk's not in good condition either, but we would have to plan for that in the future, but it's not in a playable, accessible area at this time.
Okay.
And then just moving on to the youth baseball complex. As you know, 100% paid by the Mandan Baseball Club and their gaming. Dirt work rough grading is pretty much done. Stormwater and drainage tiles are going in as we speak. Footings have been poured for the grandstands and the backstop. Poles along all 4 diamonds have been cemented in now, so they're curing. Hoping to see fabric go up on the fences on diamonds 11 and 12 probably in the next 2 weeks. 11, 9, and 10 are your main competition fields. That fencing won't go in probably for another month. We're waiting on synthetic turf. Stone should be getting delivered next week, and that's what goes on the base of the synthetic turf for drainage. So really, we're going to see a lot happen here in the next 2 to 3 weeks in those synthetic fields. Boat ramp, as we know, received that $800,000 grant along with shares from the city, county, and parks. They were digging the ramp out this morning, and I drove by before I came here. You can actually kind of see the ramp and the access to the river. It's kind of neat to see. Right around 2,000 cubic yards are getting taken out of there and hopefully going to be redistributed to the youth baseball complex at a $10 per yard savings to our construction project. It's going through testing right now. Hopefully the soils in there are minimal clays, which will help the drainage for what we need underneath the synthetic turf. But yeah, the boat ramp, we're still on schedule to potentially have that done by the end of October. But if you haven't had a chance, all the stumps removed, rough grading, again, they'll work from the water side and then work their way out. We met with MDU on Friday also. They're going to bore new transmission line from, I guess, the south side of I-94, bore underneath the interstate, underneath car bodies, and then loop in that housing development to the north. So this project kind of kicked that off to address our electrical needs, because the power lines that run through there today are too high powered for the minimal needs that we need for 2 security lights. So they're going to loop that in. That project will hopefully start in the next 2 weeks too. And then golf operations building, just had our pre-design meeting here with some engineers on Friday morning, and things are working well on that as far as opportunities and designs. We don't have anything to show for you at this point, but we met all of our needs along with Garrett and I, and so hopefully we'll have a better timeline next month. And that's all I have to add as far as construction updates for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Cole. Questions for Cole on any of the projects?
No.
Okay, move on to item number 5, approval of monthly bills.
I'll make a motion to pay our monthly bills.
Motion by Commissioner Melhoff,
Second.
second by Commissioner Scott. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Future meeting dates for Park Board Commissioners, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be October 14th, 2024, right here at 5:30. And can we go to motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Melhoff,
Second.
second by Commissioner Mutter. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.